All right, let's jump right in. Is it even possible to have a science of reality itself? A science of being? I know. To our modern ears, that sounds totally crazy. It's like trying to weigh a thought or measure an idea. But for the classical thinkers, this wasn't just some fringe idea. It was the most important, most foundational science of them all. So today, we're going to dig in and see exactly how they made the case for metaphysics, the science of being.
First things first, we've got to tackle a huge assumption we all have. When you or I hear the word science, what immediately comes to mind? Probably labs, right? Beakers, experiments, things you can measure and touch. But is that really all science is? Is that the only way to get certain knowledge? To even start this conversation, we have to rewind and understand what the classical world actually meant by science.
You see, they saw science not as a method, but as a habitus. Now, don't get tripped up by the word habit. This isn't like biting your nails. A habitus is more like an intellectual virtue, a stable, perfected skill that gets so deep into you it becomes second nature. It's this quality, this accident of the soul that actually perfects the intellect for a specific job. Think about being fluent in a language. You don't have to consciously look for words, right? Your mind has been perfected to just do it with ease and precision. Well, in this view, a science is a habitus that perfects your mind for knowing a specific part of reality. And since every science is an act of the mind, it has to have an object it's aimed at. This object always has two parts. The material object is the easy one. It's just what the science studies, all the stuff in its field. For a biologist, that's every living thing on Earth. But the formal object, that's the key. That's the specific angle or lens it uses. A biologist doesn't study an elephant because it's heavy. A physicist does that. A biologist studies the elephant precisely as a living thing. As living, or in Latin, qua living. That qua, that specific perspective, is the formal object. It's what makes biology a totally different science from physics, even when they're both staring at the same elephant.
Okay, so with that crucial idea of a formal object in our back pocket, we can start to see how different sciences relate to each other. Think of it like climbing a ladder of abstraction, where each step up is defined by the kind of reality it focuses on.
Aristotle and Aquinas basically laid out three big rungs on this ladder. We're going to start on the ground floor with physics, climb up to mathematics, and then take the final leap to the top, to metaphysics. So, step one, physics, or what we'd call natural science. This is the one we're all comfortable with. Its formal object is being as it moves and changes. And here's the crucial part. Its definitions are totally stuck to sensible physical matter. You just can't give a complete definition of human without talking about flesh and bone. You can't define tree without wood and leaves. It is fundamentally tied to the world we can see and touch. Next, we take a step up to mathematics. And right here, we make a huge leap of abstraction. The formal object of math is being as it is quantified. A mathematician isn't studying this triangle drawn on the board. They mentally leave behind all the sensible stuff, the chalk, the wood, the pixels, to study the pure form of triangle. But, and this is so cool, that form can't even exist in your mind without what we call intelligible matter. You can't think of a triangle without the concept of a surface for it to be on. You can't think of the number 5 without the underlying idea of a unit that you're repeating. It's not physical stuff, but it's the necessary conceptual stuff the form needs to exist. And this finally brings us to the very top of the ladder, metaphysics. This science pulls off the final, total act of abstraction. It's not studying things as moving, like physics, or as having quantity, like math. Its formal object is being simply as being. It abstracts away from all matter, both the physical stuff and that conceptual intelligible stuff, to study the principles that are true of absolutely anything that exists, whether that's a rock or a number or an angel. So what in the world does it mean to study being as being? I get it, it sounds totally bizarre, almost circular. But if you followed the logic up the ladder, you can see it's the necessary next step. Let's try to make this a little more concrete. Let's use our little framework. The material object of metaphysics is, well, everything. Anything that exists in any way, shape, or form. A planet, a poem, a possibility. But its formal object, its unique lens, is the one single thing that all those things share. The simple, profound fact that they are. Metaphysics studies things under the very specific aspect of ens in quantum ens. Being, simply insofar as it is being. It's looking at everything as a contingent thing, made up of an essence, the what it is, and an existence, the that it is. Let me put it another way. Physics wants to know the properties of a rock.
Psychology wants to know the nature of a thought. Metaphysics steps back and asks the bigger, weirder question: what's true of both the rock and the thought just because they're both real? What does it mean for anything to be? It's studying the absolute fundamental grammar of reality itself, things like cause and effect, substance and accident, potency and act. It's this ridiculously universal scope that led thinkers like Aquinas to argue that metaphysics has a special job. It's not just another science on the shelf. It's the ordering principle for all knowledge. They called it the Queen of the Sciences. So in the introduction to his commentary on Aristotle's Metaphysics, Aquinas makes his case. He says, look, in any ordered system, something has to be in charge. The soul rules the body, reason guides the passions. So among all the sciences, the one that gets to be the ruler has to be the one that is the most intellectual. Okay, but what does that mean? Well, he gives us 3 markers. A science is most intellectual if, 1, it studies the first causes of everything, because knowing the ultimate why gives you the deepest knowledge. 2, it has to study the most universal principles, big ideas like being itself or oneness that all the other sciences just have to assume are true. And 3, it studies things that are most separate from matter, because the intellect itself is immaterial and it understands things best when they are most like it, purely intelligible. And now here's the punchline. You might think studying first, causes, universal principles, and immaterial beings are 3 different jobs for 3 different sciences. But Aquinas pulls it all together and says no. These 3 paths all lead to the same place. There is only one science that does all 3 of those things, and that science is metaphysics. And that's exactly why it gets the crown. Because metaphysics alone hits all 3 marks. It acts as the ruler or mistress of the others. It's not bossing physicists around or telling them what to find in their experiments. No, it's studying the very foundations of reality and reason that all those other sciences have to stand on to do their work. Okay, so we've climbed this pretty wild ladder of abstraction, and we've talked about metaphysics being the queen of the sciences. But let's bring this all back down to earth for a minute. Why does any of this intensely abstract stuff actually matter? Here's the essential takeaway, the one thing to remember. The physical sciences are unbelievably powerful. They are fantastic at explaining the how of our universe, how planets orbit, how cells divide, but they always start with a given. They take for granted that anything exists at all. Metaphysics is the discipline that dares to ask the questions that come before that. It investigates the brute fact that there is something rather than nothing, and it asks what it even means for a thing to be. You know, we can spend our entire lives figuring out the intricate rules of the game, and that is an absolutely noble and necessary thing to do. But metaphysics invites us to take one step back and ask an even bigger question. It doesn't just ask how the game is played, it asks why there's a game in the first place. And that question, about the very nature of being itself, just might be the most human question we can possibly ask. Thanks for exploring it with me.